When working as an artist in residence in Malta, I learned a lot about myself, me as a performer, and my process of creation. I enjoy going out and letting inspiration come to me instead of me having to go out and look for something specific or work in a specific way. When walking through the city of Valletta, I noticed that within their architecture, water features and water in general are featured a lot. I liked looking at them and watching the water come back down, splashing back down after it had been pushed out. I got really inspired by watching the droplets fall back down. So after a separate day, after I'd looked at all the water features, I was walking through town and I noticed in this big vast space that I wanted to create some kind of performance there. After getting involved and having a look at the site, I noticed that on the floor there were water feature holes. So it was a waterless water feature. And I decided that I wanted to create a piece of performance there. I wanted to look at the water and I wanted to see how it moved without the water actually being there, and I wanted to explore that. So here's just a video of me just doing that. Oh, there you go. So I was isolating separate parts of my body, my feet and my hands, and just exploring the way that the water fell back down, and I created almost like a floor pattern for this. Within this video I'm also exploring the architecture. It's very linear, a lot of lines and also a lot of circles. In Valletta it's everywhere. Another thing that really inspired me was the sea. Obviously at home when we're trying to create work we can't be inspired by the sea because we don't have it here. And I really like the way it moved. I spent a lot of time with movements and the sea and listening to the sea and just watching it and looking at the rocks and seeing how it was completely engulfed by the sea, and they were so completely different. Like the rocks were static and they were very robust and the sea was quite elegant against it, but they worked so well together. So I really enjoyed that. So here I was sat on here, it's a lot wider than the photo looks, and I was looking at the sea and I was creating movements that flowed with the sea. I put on some music and I got very in the moment, and I wanted to explore the sea within movements, and I felt very connected to Malta in that way and very connected to the sea because it was something that I'd not done before. I'd not worked with the sea, and I really liked the use of water there, really liked it. So on the same day, as well as looking at the sea, I listened to it and I just took some clips of the sea and also some fountains. And so I closed my eyes and I was just listening to the water and the wind, and then I created movement from that separately as well. So I just wanted to split the water, I just wanted to split the feel of the water, the sight of the water and listening to the water into three separate things, and I created a bit of performance on each of those. Another thing that inspired me when walking around Valletta was parts of the city that are there but you don't see them. So for example, in this picture we climbed to loads of stairs, and it almost led to nothing, except if you looked over, this was what you saw, and it was like an abandoned house, back of an abandoned house, and no one was there, all the windows were boarded up, and it was something that it's always there, but you might not necessarily see it. And so that got me thinking onto all different kinds of things that are there, but you don't actually see them or you don't interact with them. So I went around on the same day, and I got involved with bits of architecture which you wouldn't normally play with or explore. So I found this is a very small snippet of a massive building, and I got into it and I was just exploring it and seeing how my body moved within the architecture of just a small section, and it was around the corner as well. It wasn't on the main road, so no one was there and no one could see me, but if someone happened to walk by, then they would have done. And it's a lot of chance, I think, and having a look at things that you don't normally see and exploring them I found it really interesting. And then after looking at this photo, I looked at the grid at the back, and then when walking through the city, I noticed that a lot of their doors or buildings and just architecture has a lot of bars on it, almost as if like you shouldn't be going into there because there's bars there, but they're quite pretty. And it's really strange because in Valletta they open their front doors are open, and you walk past and you don't know if it's a shop, you don't know if it's someone's house or if you can go in there or not until you're in their living room. But because the bars are there, it's almost like you're restricted to it, like you shouldn't be there or you shouldn't be going into it. And I really liked that. Another thing I got influenced by when I was there was their music. So I was walking through the street, and I could just hear this man playing electric guitar, and it really influenced me. I just sat and I listened, and you can hear in the background there's a little boy playing with his Tonka trucks, and I really liked that. And it's so culturally different in the music, and the way that people will be walking past and people will stop and they'll listen to this guy playing on electric guitar, but at home it's completely different. It's a lot longer, but I don't know, it's not working. But yeah, and it's just so completely different in their cultural, the way that they are culturally and the way that we are culturally. And we went and spoke to this man called Benny, and he was lovely, and he was just playing with his music, and he was selling a CD, and he was quite a big deal. He played in local restaurants and things, and he was talking to us about the politics of Malta and Valletta, and how, because it was their Independence Day when we were there, and he was saying how people don't like their Labour Party, and it's so different to us, because he was like, oh, Labour are the outsiders and people don't like them, and the Independence Day is very, very political, and the way that it's split up, because they have an Independence Day and then they have a day that all the British left, and that's in March, and that's a lot bigger. And he said people come together more for that, and they're not too fussed about the independence one because it's so political. But I mean, people our age in Malta are very political. They were getting involved in it, but here we tend not to. We just kind of let it be, especially our age. We just kind of let it be as it is, and we're not too fussed about it. And so yeah, when I was in Malta, I learned so much about myself. I did so many things that like I would never normally do. Like I just laid on the street and I was just watching people and watching their influences. And I was just lying there and I was taking in the heat, and it was so hot there. I was just lying there and seeing how the heat would affect me, just doing nothing, just lying there. And I was hot and I was sticky and flies were on me and it was itchy. And if I was to do that here, it's so completely different. And also in Malta, when I was doing it, people understood, like, oh yeah, she's just lying there, like, she's just doing what she wants. But if I was to do that here, I think I'd have more of a reaction. People would just look by and be like, what's she doing? Why is she on the floor? Asking questions and things. And so after I lay there and I was getting affected by the heat, I went back to the room and I did it with the aircon. And it was almost a completely different experience, because of the heat. And we didn't realise how much it affected us. Like, back in that video when I was moving, I was only doing simple movements. I was so hot, and like if I was to do that here, I could go on and it wouldn't affect me as much. It's just like the sea. When I was in the sea, and I never go in the sea, so that's a big thing for me in Malta anyway. I got in the sea, and the sea was up to my chin, and it was just it was very freeing, and I felt quite like I could do anything, and it would be okay, and it was fine. But because my body was completely in the sea, and it's completely different experience to what I would normally have here. So like, and because it's clear as well in Malta, completely clear the sea is, you can see through the sea, and it's okay because you're not scared, because you can see everything, and it's very different to how it would be here if I got in the sea, which is cold and no one wants to go in the sea. And I did a lot of exploring the sea and how it is in different weathers. So I'd go at night and it would be cold, but it would be okay because the sea was almost still warm. But if you're at home and you get in the sea at night, it's freezing. You don't get in the sea at night because it's cold and it's dark and it's quite scary. It's a completely different experience to one that you would have back in Malta, for example. But yeah, so I learned a lot about myself and the way that I am as a performer, and I learned that I don't need to go out and specifically look for something, because in the first few days I was there, I was waiting, I was going out and I was trying to find something and I couldn't, and I was panicking because I was like, I need to find something, I need to